Hey guys, just a quick warning. This episode does contain major spoilers for Harry Potter, the entire series of books and films, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, books and movies, and Batman Begins, and a lot of the Dark Knight trilogy. So just, you have been warned, so enjoy the episode.
Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome, everybody.
No new music yet, obviously.
No new music yet, but we are here. New episode of Heard About It.
Mm-hmm.
Glad you're here. It's just us two in the studio today.
Kieran is out
Kieran
because
is out.
we didn't give him enough notice.
Yeah, we didn't. This was a very
Rush.
We got to record, so we recorded.
Yeah.
But we're here. We have a great episode. We actually think even though it was rushed, I feel like we have a great episode planned out for y'all today. A lot of fun stuff we're talking about today. Shall we go ahead and get started?
Yes.
All right. Our big topic today.
One thing, though, obviously not this episode, but the next episode, I think it might just be me and Kieran because Walker will be gone.
Yes, I will be gone. So if you are getting an episode, it will be with Jackson and Kieran, which is exciting. You don't get to hear me talk as much. So, but up next, our newest topic today is adaptations. We did sequels last week. This week is adaptations, whether it's game to movie, movie to game, book to movie, any of those. It's always sometimes a struggle to move from one form of media and take a source material and bring it to a new medium.
Yes.
Fun fact, actually, I just recently saw George R. Martin was asked about how he feels about adaptations, as he famously had his entire book series adapted into a TV show. And he said, whenever someone adapting something tries to make it their own, 99.9% of the time it fails. That was his claim.
It's true. Is Game of Thrones a very book accurate or like
it was
book
so
consistent?
It's interesting. They were pretty, I've heard they do a pretty decent job, but because he has not finished the last book in the Song of Ice and Fire series, they had to go on their own for the show ending, and it's the worst season. People have said it was terrible, and George R. Martin has confirmed his ending will be different from how the show ended.
If he ever writes it.
Which is unlikely at this point. But no, there's been a lot of great adaptations out there. You know, there's been some truly great. I think, you know, when you look at it, a lot of some of the great films started as books. You know, The Godfather was obviously a book.
Oh, really?
It was, yeah. So there's a lot of great films out there. Apocalypse Now is based off of Heart of Darkness. I just named two Coppola films because I just saw a thing on Coppola. I can't think of anyone else other than Coppola right now. Shawshank Redemption.
Really?
You know, it's based off a Stephen King short story.
Wow.
Fun fact. Yeah. So, you know, a lot of the great films and a lot of the great works have been based on previous things because, you know, they're great. And so it's, if it ain't broke, don't change it. But there's been a lot of great stuff recently, and we wanted to talk more about kind of the recent stuff. One recent one that comes to mind, and a little different, you know, because more recently there's been more video game to film or TV adaptations. And Jackson, you've said you've seen Uncharted.
Yes.
And you liked it?
I thought it was fine. I thought it was a fun movie. I think we've talked about it before on this podcast. It's nothing special. It has that like early Indiana Jones kind of vibe, just where it's kind of fun and lighthearted. Not as good as Indiana Jones, obviously, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah. And I think you can make the argument, as much as I'm played through all of the first Uncharted, played through most of Uncharted 2, still working through it. I mean, you can make an argument there's nothing special in terms of the vibe that the Uncharted games give off. I'm sure I'm making a lot of Uncharted fans mad, and I still love them. I think they're really good, but they are very much derivative of those classic adventure films. Just one thing, and I didn't watch the movie, one thing that upset me was the casting of Tom Holland.
Yes.
And I think I've talked about this. Two things. A, they're too young, and I know they were trying to do more of an origin story to Nathan Drake, and that's not really explored in the game. So they
Even
were trying,
still, it was like... No.
But, you know, Sully's a lot older, and
Mark Wahlberg would have been a better Nathan Drake.
yes, like that would have been a better...
He was originally casted as...
Oh, was that true? And then they moved him to Sully and got...
Yeah.
And also, Nathan has this, like, smirky confidence to him in the games. Like, he's very, like, I got this vibe, even though he, like, sometimes really doesn't, but still actual. And I just don't think Spider-Man, in my mind, was the good casting choice for that.
There, at least Tom Holland said that he was a huge fan of these games. It was some of the first video games he'd ever played.
I think he said he played them during the
van,
Spider-Man
during
shooting.
Spider-Man Homecoming, yeah.
He was like, "Oh yeah, I just started playing them." I love those. There's a lot of funny stories about actors who got really into video games. My favorite story about that little sidetrack is Elijah Wood. I don't know on which movie. I think it was when he was filming Lord of the Rings, which we'll get to later, because I have a lot to say about this. But when he was filming, he got so addicted to Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion that he stuck the disc in the microwave and just burned it so he wouldn't keep playing it because it was becoming a problem for him on set.
That's funny.
But no, I just feel like those games, like, I just don't think Tom Holland was the right choice for Nathan Drake.
No.
I mean,
Which if they do a second one, they're going to have to.
Do you know who would have been good? Would have been good. He's a little too old, but I think James Marsden would have been a great Nathan Drake. He was Cyclops in the original X-Men films. He's the prince in Enchanted. He's in the Sonic the Hedgehog films, the Sonic's human friend.
Yeah.
But I think he has like kind of the face for it, and I think would have just been, I think has played enough kind of more charismatic roles that I think he could have handled that well. Another one we were talking about though was the Mario movie that came out recently. Another
which also we've talked about that here in the studio because that came out while we were still heard about it.
Yeah, before we took the break. Yeah. But that one was more interesting to adapt because it was one of those things where there wasn't a story to adapt; it was a world. Mm-hmm. And I guess you could have adapted, but like if they directly adapted a story from Mario game, it would have been bad. Luckily, so they definitely were like, we just got to do something new here that still feels familiar.
Mm-hmm. They did crush it with the animation, though.
The animation is flawless.
It was awesome.
And I think, Nintendo knew they wanted to play it safe after the debacle of the 93 film, which we talked a lot about when they gave, they kind of switched the opposite side of the spectrum, which we talked about in that previous episode. But no, that adaptation is definitely weirder, because it was like, they had a world to adapt and they had characters that they had to bring to screen. But other than that, it was really up to them because they were just kind of because every Mario game is the same. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, and I know, and I shouldn't say that because the 3D games do change it up a lot. And it would have been cool, I think, to see some of the uniqueness of the 3D games brought, like a Sunshine or a Galaxy. But let's just take the 2D games. They all basically have the same plot.
I think in the sequel of the Mario movie, I think they're gonna follow along with that more. I think I heard rumors of like Galaxy adaptation or something like that.
I mean, I definitely think they've confirmed they're gonna do another movie. Interesting to know. I don't know if we've talked about this yet. We may have, but they've announced not a direct sequel to the Mario movie. They have called it a film in the world of the Super Mario Brothers movie. Now that could easily just be Nintendo being weird with their wording, and it is just a sequel. That could also potentially be like a Donkey Kong film,
which I wouldn't be surprised with,
or like Luigi's Mansion, because Charlie Day
would be so good.
Did say he was down to do that if they ever did that. He's like, I know he doesn't know anything about them except that they exist, and he said in an interview, I'd do them. He's like, I don't know anything about them, but if they were gonna make them, I'd be in them.
That would be such
which I think would be really
movie.
cool. But no, speaking of when we were talking about it just earlier, speaking of Lord of the Rings, I'm gonna say my 2 pennies here, whatever the saying is.
So he's read the books and seen the movies. I've only seen the movies.
I've seen the books, read the movies, and I'm just talking movie wise. And I think a lot of people
just say I've seen the books, read the movies.
Read the books, seen the movies.
There you go. Okay.
I think the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and this is going to be like is the greatest achievement in film ever. And I know that's a lot saying, and I'm not trying to say that they're the greatest films ever made. They are the greatest achievement in film.
I think I could agree with that.
You agree with that? For what it's done for cinema in the past 20 years, and for its ability to take a lot of this very long, this very complex, It's a very intricate story that spans across 3 books, and for them to go, we're going to adapt it into this trilogy of films and to just do it flawlessly because they treated it. And I think the biggest advantage they had was treating it as one film in the terms of production process. They filmed it.
Yeah.
In production, and post-production, it was all treated as one film. And
Really? So
Yeah.
like they just like went straight shot
Yeah.
for it. How long were they filming?
I think it was like over a year was principal photography.
Wow.
And actors talked about how difficult that was because they'd be like, because when you film a movie, it's not about, you don't film it beginning to end. It's all about scheduling. You film in the most convenient and efficient way possible. So we're gonna get all the big. So I'm assuming Fellowship of the Ring, a lot of that was recorded early because was all recorded in big chunks because that's when all the big actors are together. And so you need all the schedules to align there.
Yeah.
But then I think I think the actor was talking about, we'd film a scene in the Shire where it's just Frodo and Sam. And the next scene we'd be shooting is on Mount Doom. Like that's difficult.
That makes sense
and it makes sense because they're both there. But like think about, and that's what I think is so hard about acting on a film is you got to think about your character from because those Frodo and Sam are very different people in those 2 situations, beginning of the book and movie and the end there.
I'm sure they're very familiar with it though.
You get familiar, but like
because it came out
that's
really well.
a big leap to do.
That is.
But no, they're just done so well. And it surprised me how much they're universally, I think, generally loved because I then went back, I read the books after watching the movies, but I was surprised at how much is different in the films and the movies.
Yeah,
I knew
a
they
lot.
would have taken some stuff away and I knew there was some rearranging, but there were like big things that Peter Jackson changed and added in, which I did not expect.
Yeah, they changed like almost the entire ending to like after the ring was cast.
One of the biggest changes is Tolkien basically had half of Return of the King be after the end. But it's basically all falling action, like after the big conflict. Jackson didn't want to do that. So what he did is he took the tail end of Two Towers, a lot of the end of Two Towers, and made that the beginning of Return of the King film. That way he could do less of the ending of Return of the King and make it more of an exciting film. Fun fact: Return of the King is tied with Ben-Hur for the most Oscars ever won by a film, and it won Best Picture, including all of that.
Wow.
Yeah. So greatest achievement in film, I think, but it's just one of those great adaptations, and just got it right so well on 3 books.
Which also
dang,
another
he beat
great
me to- yeah.
adaptation that has got it right on all 7 books with 8 movies would be Harry Potter.
I do want to talk about that. I'm rewatching them right now, and I just was thinking about it. I'm like,
But he's never read them.
I never read the book,
Which I think most of y'all can agree that not reading Lord of the Rings is okay. Usually that's socially acceptable. Not reading Harry Potter is not okay.
I've been
and
like
this
ostracized.
man has only
Every time I
read
read
the first one.
How could you? It's like, I'm sorry, I was reading other
You would
books.
enjoy them so much. I don't understand.
I didn't like it. I didn't like the first book. I read this. I was like, this is I don't know.
The second book even gets so much better.
I read Redwall, and I read Bone, and I read Percy Jackson, and those are my books.
You should give Chamber of Secrets a shot.
Redwall, give it a shot.
You
listeners.
give Chamber of Secrets a shot.
Maybe, I don't know, man. I don't know. But I'm rewatching them. It is incredible that they managed to get 8 films to be that consistently good.
Awesome. Which
Like,
I'm
that's
I'm
crazy.
rewatching them right now too.
I'm rewatching, but they're like,
I just watched the second one last night.
I've just finished the first 3, but I mean, it's incredible. Like you have these 7 books, so you're going to adapt them all into 7 movies or 8 movies, with the last book being 2 parts. But like, that's crazy. Like that, all 8 movies are pretty good, at least, and some of them are really good. And I think, and it's because the cool thing about the books, and from what I've heard, is that you get to see these characters go from 11 years old all the way to adulthood.
And that's what you get in the movies.
And that's what you get in the movies, because it's basically the same cast for 7 years.
Except for, I think it was Crab, who they switch from a white guy to a black guy halfway through the movie.
Well, it's just a different character. I think the idea is like Crab leaves.
No, it's Crab.
It's just supposed to be Crab. Well, I heard apparently, I think Crab's actor got arrested.
Yeah,
midway through
he got in
production
big
or something. He
trouble.
got in big trouble. So, but no. And then Dumbledore, of course, they switched after the first two movies,
Oh yeah, of course.
which I don't have minded as much, except he totally changes.
I really like the new Dumbledore.
I think he's a better one, but I will admit, after the first two movies and the third movies, like the first two films and then 3 through 7 feel like they're totally different franchises.
That's also because you have Chris Columbus.
Yeah,
He's
because
a
Chris
very
Columbus has
different
he's a
director.
Spielbergian director on the first two films.
Using that term again.
Yeah. He's from I think people describe him as like from the school of Spielberg. So he makes those first two and then he kind of leaves. And so then you just get a bunch of directors for 3 through 7 who give it this much different tone and totally change the layout of Hogwarts. I want to point out because I remember like I was watching 3 and Hagrid's like house is on this big hill that's like a distance away. Yeah. And the first one was like, couldn't they walk to it from like an outdoor courtyard, like right in front of?
I mean, you get used to it.
I get used to it because it's more of the norm.
I like the feel of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, part 1 and 2. It's so much better than 1 and 2.
I like it better, but it's just funny when I'm rewatching them and it's like so jarring. You're like, oh, what's going on?
The third one, they have a director. I forget his name, but he's only there for the third movie, and then for 4, 5, 6, and 7, 1, and 2,
it's all the same director. That makes sense because 3 feels different from all. It's a weird one.
It's so snappy.
It is snappy. It moves well, and I think that's an exciting one
with like the time and stuff.
Because it's time, and also it's this more thriller thing as kind of series gets closer and closer to Hogwarts, which makes for this more suspenseful movie.
Yes.
What's your favorite of the films? And you could give your favorite book. I can't give a favorite
my favorite book would be 7.
7.
Favorite movie, either the third or 7 part 2.
7 part 2. I'm a big fan of Order of the Phoenix book, movie 5.
A lot of people like that one. It's a good
really
one.
like Order, which apparently is the largest book. It's the longest book. But it didn't get the 2-part treatment.
No, because there's a huge montage in the middle. When you watch it, you'll see that part is basically where the book kind of just like extends out for a while.
J.K. Rowling was like, okay,
and it just kind of
I'm gonna stop any forward progress.
Yeah,
was that what was her, and just like extrapolate
6,
on their
7
training
chapters.
sequence.
It's just like Umbridge applying more rules. And it's this whole thing.
I'm sorry. I'm just thinking of like they're reading through that, and the screenwriter's like, "Oh, I got this," and then they just write that montage that's like 10, like 2 minutes max, and they're like, "There, we got through 50 pages." 2 minutes.
But speaking of Harry Potter, there's more to it than we know because they're making a TV show right now that is going to be season by season, which relates to book by book. So season 1 is going to be book 1. Season 5 is going to be book 5. Season 7 is going to be book 7. Obviously, there won't be 2 seasons for 7 because it's a season. I think they have so much potential with this. If they can separate, one of the things they have to get right is the separation between episodes. Because if they just have it left on like bad endings for each episode, that's going to really affect the performance.
Like having
of the
good
show.
pacing on the episodes.
Yeah, they have to have really good pacing on the episodes, which I mean, it's a book, it's separated by chapters, so it should be a little
you can do that pretty
easier
well.
to do.
I mean, you just name the episodes after the chapters and try to get through.
You can't have 30
30
episodes in a season.
I do.
I mean, you could, but I guess
because I will say I think that has the potential to be better than the films. Because every time I watch the movies with the people, and I'm like, so what about that? And they'll go, they explain that in the books, and that will happen every 3 minutes. I think when I'm watching a Harry Potter film.
Yeah.
So what about that? They explain that in the books. Don't worry.
Yeah. And then I think Harry, Ron, and Hermione are replaceable with other actors and actresses.
Yes.
I think that's easy. I think there's a few characters that are going to be really hard to replace.
I was about to say,
Snape.
Alan Rickman feels irreplaceable as Snape. I mean, he truly made that role his own.
So that will be very rough. Maybe, I'm sure you could get another Dumbledore.
Maybe we could do a fan casting. Like if we were to cast
Tom Holland as Harry Potter. No, I'm kidding.
he may be too young, but the guy who played Percy. Could he be Harry?
No. For all Harry, Ron,
need
and Hermione,
British
they have
actors.
to be new actors starting at
actors.
11 because they need to do that same thing.
And they got to be
otherwise.
British. I think you
They
got to
have to
keep
be
it British.
British as
That's
well.
true.
Okay, so who would you want as like Professor McGonagall?
That is tough. I have no idea, really. I'm trying to think.
Do you think she's
Maybe-
replaceable though?
Maybe Kate Blanchett.
I don't know who that is.
She's not British, but she's Galadriel in Lord of the Rings. She's Hela. She could do a pretty decent job. Who would you have Dumbledore? I mean, you have a chance to go a full series with the Dumbledore.
I would like. I always forget his last name. It's like Ian something, but he's too old.
Ian McKellen.
Yeah, Ian McKellen.
He'd always do a good job. But I mean, he's already Gandalf. You know? That's
I know
the joke.
that-
You can't
that'd
mix
be
them up.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, there's still a lot
Could
of.
you imagine
talent
like the actor of House to be Snape?
there. He would do because he's actually British.
Yeah.
I just found that out that the guy who
Yeah, I
plays
know.
Dr.
It's-
House
it's
is British,
crazy.
and I was like,
He would be like-
what? I was like, because I've only seen him in the context of House.
See Harry.
Like just like cynical. He's just like a cynical Dumbledore. The whole.
no, Snape. I said Snape. I mean, I guess he could be Dumbledore, maybe.
Oh, sorry, yeah, but he'd be a good Snape. I think he'd be better as Snape.
Yeah.
But no, I think that has a good potential.
Who would be Mr. Weasley?
You just got to get a family of redheads. I can't do redhead British actors right now.
Is the actor of Fred and George the same person, or is that those are
No,
two
it's
different-
twins.
They're twins.
One of my favorite interviews ever is the two guys who play Fred and George trick the interviewer into thinking they're not twins. It's like, so Ariel we met on the set. It's crazy. You look that much alike. Yeah, I know.
That's awesome.
You should look that up. It's really funny. Well, it's been a lot of talk of adaptations.
Yes, it has.
Today.
Is there any more?
I think we're good to move on.
Okay.
But in the same vein,
We said we were going to do Clue Game, but we didn't.
yeah, we were gonna do Clue Game. We're not gonna do it right now. So, we're gonna start with our new segment that we brought out in the first episode of season 2. We're bringing it back for a second time. It's How They Made It.
Yeah.
Invisible edit that Jackson's never gonna put in because that's the bit.
The music was good last episode. Though.
Music was good. Yeah.
It's cool.
Sorry, How They Did It. I can't even remember the name of our segment. So I have the story of the development of a certain film. Very interesting. Today we're going to be looking at, since we're talking about adaptations, Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, the first of his Dark Knight trilogy. So it started in January 2003. Warner Brothers hired Memento director Christopher Nolan to direct an untitled Batman film and got David S. Goyer signed on to write the script 2 months later. So interesting enough, I thought Jonathan Nolan wrote all 3 of them. I guess he may have only wrote Dark Knight Rises, Christopher's brother, who writes a lot of scripts with him. I think he only wrote them.
He has a brother
Yeah, Jonathan
that
Nolan.
writes scripts.
Yeah, he does he created Westworld, I believe, or worked on.
That's-
the showrunner for
That's
Westworld.
kind of sad. Nobody ever talks about him.
Yeah, but he exists. He exists. I also think he produced or was an executive producer on Fallout,
I heard that's good.
which was really good. But
Did you watch it?
I still need to watch it. It's on my watch list, but another great adaptation we could talk about. See, we're making connections, people. But
Connections. It's all about the connections.
it's all about the connections. But interestingly enough, so I also read this. Warner Brothers, for a long time, didn't want to make another Batman film after Batman and Robin because that series ended so poorly, and the movie is bad. It is really bad. But
Very bad.
interesting enough, and I feel like I get this vibe when I look back at those films of well, of course Christopher Nolan would have been signed on to make the Batman films. He's such this accomplished director. He hadn't really
What
I
had he had
forgot.
before?
All he had was Memento and
Prestige.
Insomnia.
He had Prestige.
No, Prestige came out after Batman Begins. They may have been working
Wow.
in tandem. So Batman Begins was kind of the big film that really made Nolan more of a blockbuster household name in directing. Memento, I think, and Insomnia were popular among cinephiles and, that had its niche. But it was like, that's surprising to me
Well, he
that
also
Warner
had the
Brothers
following, but nobody really knows about that.
following, yeah. But like, that's surprising to me that Warner Brothers bet so much and looked at those two films and said, he can make a Batman film.
Well,
Just
he did.
very interesting to
He
me.
did.
And he
lucked
did.
out.
He made a really
What
good...
came out during the trilogy again? Like he had like Inception.
I think it's
was it
Inception,
and
Prestige.
I think that's it.
I think those were the two that ended up
In
coming
between,
out while
which
he was
is
working.
crazy that
Crazy,
you're
yeah.
doing 5 movies in the span of what, like 4 years, 5 years.
It was a lot. I mean, that was the Dark Knight trilogy was definitely like his peak era when he was working on films. And still, I mean, he's
you
never had a
just
peak.
contradicted yourself.
I know. Sorry, he just
a few episodes ago.
Don't run it
Walker
back.
was saying about how a good director doesn't have a peak section of when they're making films.
But I
it's
said
always
that
just.
sometimes they have a group of films that exist with each other.
But you used the word peak, which is
I
what
didn't
you were
mean to use
strongly
it.
against.
You're right. Jackson called me out, and I appreciate that. It was not
If
his
Kieran
peak.
was here, he'd be roasting you
Yeah.
because you were the one talking to him about
Yeah.
that.
He had a lot of good movies during the Dark Knight trilogy that weren't just the Dark Knight trilogy. Not a lot, but he had a good like section of filmmaking, and there wasn't a peak because, as I said before, directors like Nolan, they don't peak. But no. I didn't really. Other interesting fact while they were producing it, the writers considered having Harvey Dent in the film, but replaced him with a new character, Rachel Dawes. They realized they couldn't do him justice. So,
Okay, so we're just talking about Batman Begins.
Batman Begins. But the plan was to have Harvey Dent be a character in Batman Begins.
That'd be awesome.
And they didn't want him to yet, so they saved him for
Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight. And then they brought in Rachel, who works at the DA's office, which ends up being Batman's love interest.
Is that in the comics at all?
That's what I was going to say. I think that was one of the more interesting things they did was that he has a love interest. And Batman, I'm not saying he doesn't. He has 2 love interests in the films, which they speed run through in Dark Knight Rises, which is Talia al Ghul and Catwoman. Those are pretty much the 2 people he's interested in romantically in the comics. Rachel was made for the movies, and so I think it was very interesting to base a lot of Batman's character on Rachel. Because A, she's not from the comics, and B, having a Batman so obsessed with romance feels counterintuitive to the character. And I'm not saying you can't, because I think some really interesting plot lines have come from Batman's romance.
Yeah.
Like Batman Hush, he starts dating Catwoman.
Yeah.
And that becomes a very big part of it. And it's really cool when you read that comic series.
You
because
see that in the Batman too.
in the Batman, but you see him in Hush, he's distracted.
Yes.
And it's like one of the few times you see Batman like distracted in the films by this
he kind of
relationship
like
with Catwoman.
puts away the cape for a while. Like at least in the movie.
In the movie, and that's more tying into the Dark Knight Returns comic that Nolan really liked. But in Hush, it's kind of he starts dating Catwoman, and it's kind of like it's this other layer he has to think about. And of course, they start dating before she knows he's Bruce, which is interesting. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But Selena knows Bruce. And Selena knows Batman. She doesn't know they're the same person.
But
it's really
of
interesting.
course he
but
knows.
Batman knows that Selena, because Selena has always been like, yeah, I'm Catwoman. So
Yeah.
it makes for a really interesting dynamic. Anyway, another interesting thing was that Nolan did not have a problem with the studio's requirement that the film not be R-rated, which I guess makes sense, because
Appeal to the younger audience.
he's only done one R film, which is Oppenheimer, right? It's the only film.
Memento.
Memento is R-rated. Okay.
And the following might be, I'm not sure.
I think Insomnia also might be.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so he had done all R-rated films. So I guess
to that point.
Up to that point. And so I guess they were like, hey, and I don't think anyone's tried to do an R-rated live action Batman film, not
Well,
counting the Joker.
The Batman
Joker.
almost was.
Were they considering an R-rated? That would have been interesting to see. I could see them doing an interesting thing with an R-rated.
Riddler would have been a lot more graphic.
It was the closest to an R-rated Batman movie I think we
Yes,
got with the Batman. But I think that's because he did say he wanted to make the film that he wanted to see when he was 11 years old. He said, which is very true. I think he did keep it besides The Dark Knight, because The Dark Knight definitely 11-year-olds. That one's way darker. But Batman Begins is definitely a more chill film. I think where I think younger. He obviously said not like 8-year-olds, but he said I think tweens could enjoy it. I found this very interesting when I was reading about it. Due to Batman's extensive rogues gallery over 70 years, Goyer and Nolan, the other screenwriter, decided to use the Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul as the film's villains, as both characters had not been featured in previous Batman films nor in Adam West's 60s television series. That's really interesting to me. I get Ra's al Ghul.
Is it Raz or is it Raish?
I never know. It's Raish or Raz.
In Arkham games, they say Raish,
Yeah.
but on the movies, they say Raz.
I think it depends. I mean, it was never spoken until
He is a British director, so.
But and I get more Ra's al Ghul because he's not as exciting of a villain, I think, as his others. I think he's still a really cool villain, but he's not as like costumed. Scarecrow, not having been in anything else before that, surprises me because he's such a good Batman villain and very iconic. I feel like.
Yeah, he did a fantastic.
And Cillian Murphy did such a good job, and Cillian Murphy did a great job. I'm actually not a fan of the way Scarecrow is portrayed and I have a lot of problems because I like the Nolan trilogy of Batman films.
Scarecrow adaptation. He doesn't like
Bane. And I also don't like Bane. That's it. But
just those two.
I get Nolan wanted to do a grounded Batman film that's like realistic, but it's a comic book. Like these villains are supposed to be fun, and part of what makes them so interesting is that they are very stylized. Like Scarecrow in the comics is in a full Scarecrow suit, is like 6'3", 100 pounds, is like Slenderman over here. Like he's creepy. Like he is legitimately terrifying even without the gas. And I get that he wanted to do, he's a psychiatrist and he wears this mask, but it would have been cooler to see them take that a little bit farther, I think. And if Cillian Murphy lost like a ton of weight for it, like Christian Bale style in that one film. But I find that very interesting that, and I'm glad they did choose different villains to do something different, and I think not starting with Joker is always a strong, especially considering the Tim Burton films start with Joker. So I think it was,
well, I guess so you only had like one Batman movie franchise before that, so it wasn't as big as a deal. Whereas you see Joker all over the place. But
he'd also been in the Adam West films, and he was, Joker was his arch nemesis. So, I also found this really interesting when they're reading. Nolan really wanted bats. The reason for for why Bruce becomes a costumed superhero. It is also for this reason that Nolan believes other DC characters do not exist in the universes of his film. Otherwise, Wayne's reasons for taking up costume vigilantism would have been very different. So just very interesting, that I guess that better explains why he never wanted to mention a Superman or, because Metropolis is supposed to be right there. So, I do find that one big thing that's unique about Nolan's universe is that, not unique, I guess a lot of the other previous ones is that Batman is the only superhero in this universe. Which I'm not a huge fan of when they do that. I was
going to say I like.
Really, because I think it's also always really entertaining when you see Batman interact with other superheroes, especially in the animated universe, because it just shows you how different of a superhero he is compared to the others. Because he's not he is a symbol of hope for Gotham, and that's a big thing about Bruce's character arc is learning, to become less of a symbol of fear and more of a symbol for hope. I think the Batman did a good job of that, but Superman is very
they outright explicitly said it at the end.
Yeah.
So.
But there's a really cool scene in Batman Hush where he's having to save a kid from Killer Croc, and he's while he's trying to escape, Bruce is talking to himself, and he goes, Clark would have done such a better job getting this kid. He has the Boy Scout. He says he has the Boy Scout mentality. He could have helped this kid a little better. But Batman is very I got to do a job. And so he's not concerned with making sure that kid's okay. He is, but not he's I got to get you out, Whereas Superman is more, knight in shining armor, which I find very interesting when you pair them all together.
I don't like Superman.
I think he can be good.
Yeah.
Oftentimes he is poorly done. I am excited to see what James Gunn does with him though in the new film. Yeah. One of the craziest things I've heard in this thing is that Nolan refused to do a second unit for this film. And if you don't know what that is, a lot of film productions, when you're getting establishing shots or shots that don't need actors in them, and so you don't really need a lot of directing, you get what's called a second unit that just quickly films them in tandem with you filming the shots. So if you ever see a big wide shot of a city, that's not usually the director of the film shooting that. That's usually... But in Nolan's case, he shoots everything himself.
Yeah.
Because he wants to keep, like, he's so obsessed with, like, the style and the vision of it. So he didn't even trust a second unit with that, which goes to show, like, how amazing of a director he is.
Is
That he's
the set on that list that you're about to talk about?
they do talk about the set a little bit.
I watched a video on the set.
Really?
It is crazy.
I know. I was reading
They
about it. It's-
built Gotham City in these huge like military bunkers kind of thing. Like not bunkers, but like the huge arches that you see like on land and stuff. They built an entire city from the ground up just to like have Gotham in there and stuff. And
But also at the same time, like they would build all these cool stuff. But Nolan also filmed a lot of Gotham scenes in real cities in the U.S., which I appreciate, you know, because to keep it more grounded and to make this feel like it feels real. But some of like the story about how they build the Batcave was crazy. Like the amount of water that they use, like they built that waterfall in the Batcave, and also they built a village in the front doors to Ra's temple at that opening scene in the mountains, you know, and like a road to the remote area. But the weather during the filming, there was 75 miles per hour winds, rain, but there was like no snow. And it was like one of the, like you needed snow for that scene because you wanted to give it this like northern vibe, and it wasn't snowing for him. Which I think is really funny. Last little thing we want to talk about is the music, which I know you're excited about. We're going to the music thing, guys. We're actually talking about music.
audio listeners reporting at a logo on our mug.
Oh yeah. But Batman Begins, like the entire trilogy, was composed by Hans Zimmer and his friend James Newton Howard. So it was actually two composers, which is very interesting how they like used that. So
Hans Zimmer works with a lot more people to make music than I think. Like usually I used to think that he like did it all by himself, but he has a lot of help.
Yeah, like it's really interesting. I think Curse of the Black Pearl, he didn't compose the music, but it was one of his like students did it, and I think he helped a lot on it.
Yeah,
and then he
took over
fully took over for the last three.
Next one.
But the
one.
two composers collaborated on separate themes for Batman, and so they like did a Bruce theme and a Batman theme to like deal with the two different personas, and then for the orchestra, Zimmer chose to use more than the number of cellos. He used more than the usual number in an orchestra, which I found interesting. And then this is really cool. Both composers collaborated to create 2 hours and 20 minutes worth of music for the film, which is kind of crazy. Because I would say, I think if you're thinking about it, I'd say a film is usually maybe 80% of it is scored. You know, I think that's a good percentage, like on average, like for all the scenes that you see, about 80% of it actually has music backing it.
Yeah.
So usually soundtracks are about like 90 minutes, you know, for if it's like a 2 hour movie, or it's like an hour 20, because, you know, it's not like it's a full backing track, but they had 2 hours and 20 minutes worth of music for that film, which is kind of crazy. And Zimmer, apparently he composed the action sequences, and then Howard focused on the dramatic scenes. And that's how they divvied it up. So really cool movie when you look at kind of what Nolan wanted to do for it and kind of the vision he had.
Yeah.
And all the different stuff. And don't get me wrong, I love those films. The Dark Knight is my favorite film of all time.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've talked about that so many times.
Well,
Anyway,
I know you really liked it. I didn't know it was
my
your
favorite film of all
favorite
time.
film of all time.
I still think Matt Reeves has had the best Batman universe.
Matt Reeves. Is that the new one?
That's the new one. He did the Batman.
Well, he only has one movie. So
He only has one
that's
movie,
To
but-
be determined.
To be determined, but I think the Batman was the best, like when you're looking at true, like to the comics Batman, best to live action adaptation.
So good.
Because I think what he did is he perfectly combined the stylized choices of Burton's world that gave it the comic book feel and the more grounded feel of Nolan's, and kind of did a good kind of mashup of those.
I showed my sister that movie for the first time.
The Batman?
Yeah.
What'd she think?
She really liked it.
My sister was not a big fan of it. She was like, I don't know, it was just boring. It's like no one in my family really liked it. And I was like, what are you talking about? It's like they're just so slow and boring. And it's like, you know, Batman doesn't fight like. I'm about to rant here for a little bit. So I know we all like to think that Batman is this guy who runs around. Like 60% of Batman comics is him being a detective. Like he's not fighting a ton of guys. And so that's what I appreciate about the Batman. It was more realistic to how Batman actually functions. which is he's not really like running around fighting people at night. Like he's usually investigating like stuff when it's comics.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but like the Batman's opening scene where all the criminals are doing all this stuff and then the bat signal comes up and they look in the corner and like it could be him, but he's only in like one like that perfectly encapsulates what Batman is supposed to be.
It's kind of like the beginning of one of, I forget which film, but one of Tim Burton's films where he's like, it's like, what do you mean?
Yeah, that's
Batman's
Batman.
all over the place.
Yeah, he's like, he could be anywhere.
He could be anywhere. He's
Well,
not
it's
here.
also similar to the opening of Dark Knight where they're like doing the deal and he sees the bat and he's like, oh, not tonight, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm not trying to diss on Nolan's films because I like them, but it is really cool to see how he achieved his more grounded
Ever since
look.
you talked about how what existing IP adaptation you'd want Nolan to do, you mentioned Control.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it. I really want him to do an Alan Wake one. Like that will never happen, obviously, but that would be so good.
Apparently, AMC
They're doing a TV show.
is doing a TV show,
Which is another adaptation, though.
Another adaptation, which it may be stuck in development hell, which makes sense given the circumstances because it is like a weird TV. It's a weird, obscure game that not a lot of people know about. So I think they're having like trouble with motivation. I'm sure, like wanting to make that. But an Alan Wake TV show has a lot of potential.
There's a lot to unpack there, and I can understand if they're.
I think he's more. I think in terms of just like the visuals, I think Nolan would be better suited for Control. I think like a Jordan Peele on an Alan Wake would be
that would be really good. Do you think? I'd rather them make a movie than a TV show for it.
I think it works better because like even the game is split up into episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
And they even do like when you play through Alan Wake, they kind of frame it like a TV show.
They're gonna have
there's the previouslys
and the
new start every chapter.
Yeah, they're gonna have like the opening. They're gonna have opening credits for the TV show because of how stylized that game is, and it's gonna be like a James Bond intro because the music and everything they do for that game and stuff.
Yeah, it'll be cool. Anyway. That was Nolan's Batman. Hope y'all liked that segment. We're going to end it off here with a review. And we talked about it last episode. We are reviewing today
Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, the most recent Smash Brothers game.
Released in 2018.
Released 5th in the series.
Is it 5th? Let's see.
It is
64.
Technically
Melee.
6.
Yeah, Wii U DS or 3DS. Wii. And then, so 6 technically.
Yeah. So, Smash Ultimate. I think, here's the thing. We were not in the Melee days. So we did not play a ton of Melee.
I was in the Brawl days.
I played Brawl. I started with Brawl. But so I was not there when like
But
Melee.
I also grew up with classic Smash, like 64
Smash.
Because my grandparents had a 64 there, and all of my cousins would play it all the time. So
Ultimate is the best Smash. I think it's just hands down.
I think so. Yeah,
it's so well done, and that game to have that many have that large of a roster in a fighting game.
Mm-hmm.
And
how many 71 at launch, and then you had Piranha Plant, and then you had the other DLCs. So you had the 5 in the first pack, and then the 6 in the second. So 11 more. So that's 82 people total.
That's an insane number
Plus
for
the
a
Mii
fighting
Fighters.
game.
So 85 people total because of the Mii Fighters.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
Yeah. And one thing I think you have to really appreciate about Sakurai when he was developing that game, and I'm going to go to the first game for a little bit because I just want to talk about Smash in general before I go into Ultimate. I mean, to work on a fighting game that's like feels totally different from any other fighting game on the market when he was making it, like the platform fighter, like that was new. And then for him to say, we should put Nintendo characters in this. I think it's just genius.
That was the best idea you could do. Because before that, you hadn't seen like Link and Mario in the same game at all, right?
It's truly like such a cool, like it's almost like a celebration of just the industry, especially Ultimate, I think. Because it has such it's the biggest roster of
You're getting
Nintendo
characters
players.
from like PlayStation exclusives.
Yeah.
And sometimes even did they have
like Steve.
Yeah.
What is Steve doing in Smash? It doesn't
Steve's the Minecraft character, if y'all don't know.
like that's and like it's they got Dragon Quest, they got Cloud. It's got everybody. Snake, which was I remember when it came out in Brawl, that was a big deal because that was the big.
Because
Sonic and Snake were the two first non-Nintendo
characters
to be in a Smash game, and so that was a big deal. But no, I mean, it's a truly great fighting game, and I've poured hours into it with my friends, and it's just, there's so many little things you can learn, and every character, and I know there's some balancing issues with the DLC fighters, especially, but overall, it's pretty decent.
It is the one of, if not the only game I go back to the Switch to play.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's some other online, but it is the game where I'm like, okay, I'll play some Smash.
I need to pick up Tears of the Kingdom again, obviously, but I haven't picked up my Switch to play anything else but Smash Bros. In the
Not
past.
Mario Kart?
Mario Kart occasionally, but in the past year, that's all I've done.
I mean, I just remember, and I also feel like it transcends a lot of the people who have like console camps, because I feel like even if like you're with a guy who like just plays PlayStation, if you're like, you want to play Smash, they're like, oh, sure. Like everyone, and it is one of those games where it's a lot of fun because the moves are just flashing enough where you can button mash your way and it's pretty fun, but you can then get really deep into like how your character plays and all the combos and stuff and all the ways you can play your character.
Because there's so many little things. Like I just found out maybe a month ago that there's these things called tilt moves that.
Oh yeah, you didn't know that where you've like slightly moved the joystick?
I'm like, come on, there's so much.
Yeah.
And then like they have specialized controls for specialized characters like Ryu and
that's really cool. All the fighting game characters, they gave them their.
You have like the Street Fighter characters, and what is that?
I don't know.
You still have
Pipes.
There's weird pipe noises going on. It's like the basilisk. But anyways, you can do like all the specific like up left B or like up B
like
left.
the quarter circle forward B, and like that will register the same way in Street Fighter. No, Sakurai's and his team, his like attention to detail with, we're bringing this character to the game. Let's we have to make sure that like we get everything recognizable about this character into the game, and like we make sure like people recognize their moves, and we make this, how do we make this character unique to the game and make them feel unique to their franchise?
There's so many
while
good
still
examples of that too.
Meshing into and I know some of that has led to some of the more broken characters and some of the more problem, but like for him to say for him to design Steve the way Steve is designed in that game
so much fun.
Is genius. I mean, okay, so you can mine, and like one of the coolest details about Steve is depending on where you are, like what stage you're on, determines the frequency of material you mine. Like, so if you're on a metal stage, you'll get more metal stuff, but if you're on like a more normal, like grassy kind of stage, it's where you'll get more dirt and wood.
Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. I don't have Steve, so I don't.
Okay. So I do want to talk about the campaign and spirits. Definitely not as good as Subspace Emissary.
Is that Brawl?
Which is Brawl's campaign. And I want to talk about a little bit about, I know this is Ultimate's review. No one talks enough about how cool Subspace Emissary is.
I forget how it went.
I mean, it's not even detail-wise. It's just that he was able to create a really cool silent film, like game story with no dialogue, but like brought in all these different characters and all these different villains and like made it one coherent story. And it's really cool because like everyone pretty much starts out on these different places in the game world. And Sakurai's and the story just slowly brings them all together. World of Light,
I started it and I didn't finish it.
It was cool. I finished it. It were some cool moments, and it was a cool map and a cool idea, and it was a great way to like get spirits easily.
I don't like spirits or trophies. I just want to have a usual fighting game.
I get though why he does it, because there's a lot of people that can't make it into the roster, and so
that's fair.
He wants to bring a lot of different characters into the game. So I think it's kind of cool when you look at Smash. It's kind of like this sphere of characters. So you have kind of like, you have the fighters, you have the assist trophies, and then you have the spirits in terms of like characters, like if you're a really big character, you get like a fighter, if you're like a kind of cool character that's like recognizable, we'll give you an assist trophy. And then if you're a character that people will know but we don't think, we'll give you a spirit. So I like that there's that kind of hierarchy, and so he's able to put in a ton of people. And like I really appreciate that he's gotten a lot of like a bunch of people into the game. Like even indie games have gotten in there. Like
like
the Sans is a costume. All the Shovel Knight characters are Shovel Knight's an assist trophy, and then there's a lot of spirits. But it is, I like spirits, like I'm a Punch Out fan. So I don't play Little Mac. So it's nice that Little Mac is there, but then it's cool to collect all like the Punch Out spirits that are in the
is
game.
the coach there?
I think Doc is a spirit.
Yeah.
But World of Light to me, because it is just fighters, it's just like plays out like any other fight. What I appreciate about Subspace Emissary is that he understood if you have a platform fighter, you have the basics for a side-scrolling beat 'em up. And so the fact that Subspace turns into a side-scrolling beat 'em up with unique enemies, I think is really cool.
That is cool.
So I think World of Light, it was sad that with such a large roster, he couldn't do something like Subspace. But it's still a really good game.
Yeah.
And and I do like all the extra game modes he did add. One of my favorites that I feel like people sleep on, but is really fun to play is Smashdown.
Smashdown's fun.
Smashdown
I was really me and my cousin, my brother were playing that. I kept losing so much. I was so sad. I was upset.
But what's really fun is like one of my favorite things to do is like if you know like who your friend's main and who your friend's good at, you just play as them. You steal them, and they're like terrible.
I think I was playing the game the other day, and I was like, what if there was a mode? So when you like fall off the edge or go off the screen, there's like a huge burst of like a light beam just to symbolize that you've died. What if that beam did like a bunch of damage, and so if you're caught in that, you just wouldn't that be awesome
cool.
mode? Or like
it'd be chaotic, but like it'd be that, but then you'd have like 15 stocks.
Yeah.
Like you'd have a big stock.
What do you think they'll do for the next one?
That's the thing. Like I think what you have to do, Ultimate? I think you just totally redo it and like reboot it, and so give even like the original roster new movesets and like let people relearn it. Because I do appreciate that he's kept this relative consistency with character special moves like Mario, like all the original rosters kept the same. But like it'd be cool to see, do you think Mario have more like Cappy based moveset, maybe give Luigi like a Poltergust based moveset.
Do you think they could they could do that, and do you think they should go back and minimize the roster a little bit down to like, I wouldn't say like 64, but maybe Melee or
I think
Brawl.
you have like the Melee roster, scrap everybody but like the Melee roster maybe, and then just get totally new, like try to get totally new characters in there, and really change it up. Because I think
change the art style a little bit,
and change the art style a little bit, make it a little different,
like Mario Wonder kind of.
Maybe not Wonder, make it really cool.
The idea of
like,
changing it to
like a Striker style vibe. Strikers have this very interesting, like in your face kind of vibe.
Yeah,
like,
that would be cool.
A
little bit more 3D to it.
Yeah. But no, I think
maybe a first person Smash.
No, come on. But no, Smash definitely I think one of the best fighting games out there in terms of just general accessibility and what people are able to do. So, and its popularity can easily be seen because so many people are trying to.
How did you feel about the stage transformations?
I never play with them. I think it's cool.
I think it's cool. It's just like so much to worry about.
And hey, Smash, is apparently the only way we can listen to OSTs according to Nintendo.
Yeah, well, they sell CDs, I think, still on their games, so you could get it that way. But
it's just funny to me that they were like, "Hey, guess what, guys? You can listen to songs off the Smash soundtrack, and you can even have your Switch off." And it's like, or hear me out. You have the OSTs. You put them
on a streaming service.
Wow.
And make a bunch of money that way.
To make money.
You're not losing anything.
Yeah. But anyway, that was just funny to me when they were just like, really, because I know anytime like Nintendo does a DMCA takedown, I always see a comment like Nintendo was still thinking we're listening to their songs with the listenability on Smash Ultimate.
So, which I appreciate they're there, but like, come on,
yeah,
there's no need.
But no,
Stage Builder, did you ever use that?
I tried it. It was definitely one of the more fun stage
You
builders.
really can only do it in handheld.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
But I tried to make some like fun Bowser's Castle stages.
Cool.
I did one. My craziest one is where I tried to make Glass Joe. They're all terrible because I'm not an artist, so they all look terrible. But it was like you're on Glass Joe, and he's trying to make. Oh, I also did Final Corridor in Undertale. So it
That's
was just,
cool.
but it was boring. It was just like a flat platform, and then there
Yeah.
were these columns that were like obstructing your view.
What if you could like import your Mario Maker 2 levels in to play on?
That'd be so chaotic.
That'd be so cool.
Well,
Like and have it like an auto scroller like this.
Yeah.
A few stages. Oh, that'd be so
that'd
cool.
be really cool.
They would never do that, but
I think what they should do would be a really fun, like not like a full game, but like kind of a mini mode. Is if they did a Smash game, but you it's 8-bit and you're playing as all the original 8-bit characters, and they play like their their character from the NES version, but it's like a Smash game more. That'd be cool.
that would maybe like a mode or something.
Yeah, like that's a mode or something.
Well, I don't know. I feel
Anyway,
like we've talked about
about
Smash
a lot. We talked
Ultimate
about a
enough.
lot today.
We
I think
did.
This has been a long episode.
I think it has been probably an hour and 10 minutes.
Wow.
So,
So
far.
we'll probably end it for y'all. 'cause that's
We're
been
going
long.
to record a segment after this and throw in the beginning. Obviously, you'd have heard it before, but we're going to do a huge spoiler warning for everything that we've discussed in the beginning,
yeah.
just so people know. Because I was thinking
Yeah.
about them, like we've spoiled a lot. I mean,
We have spoiled
this
a lot.
stuff has been out for years, but like,
Yeah,
you can
so
never be too careful.
hopefully y'all have seen it all. But yes, we should mention that. We will mention that at the end. Anyway, y'all have a good day. Thank you for sticking with us.
Walker won't be here next week.
I won't be here next week, which is sad.
Maybe
but
I won't be here next
Maybe
week.
I-
We'll
so.
see.
If you see the next episode, I won't be there. But we thank y'all for tuning in this long, and y'all have a great day.
See ya.
See ya.